Community Hotline is made possible with generous support by Gresham Ford, the dealer with a heart. The Contribute to the Community program provides the opportunity for the Gresham Ford team to make a positive impact, serving their customers and helping people across the community. The Outlook, serving the residents of East Multnomah County for more than 100 years. The region's #1 source for information, The Outlook provides readers with intensely local coverage of the issues and people that impact our lives and community. The Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission, advocating on behalf of the public interest on communications policy issues at the local, state, and federal levels. A very special thanks to all our sponsors who help make our programming possible.
Hi, I'm Monica Weitzel, the host of Community Hotline. Each week, we'll talk with different nonprofits, schools, and government agencies making positive change in our communities. On tonight's program, we'll hear from Gresham City Councilor Eddie Morales about the organization he founded, East County Rising. He and Executive Director Luz Reyna will share why they think their organization is important to the citizens of this area and how you too can get involved. Then we'll have a chat with MetroEast's own Digital Equity and Inclusion Manager, Jessica Liu, about Digital Inclusion Week and Community Media Day, and what we're doing here to recognize the importance of both. We'll be sharing a lot of good information on Community Hotline. Stick around. It's all coming up next. Hi, and welcome to Community Hotline. I'm Monica Weitzel. We're here in Gresham at MetroEast Community Media. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to start out talking with Gresham City Councilor Eddie Morales, who is also the founder of an organization called East County Rising. He's here with his Executive Director, Luz Reyna, and I'm happy to have you both here. Thanks for being here.
We're really excited to be here. Thank you for having us.
Good. Well, you know, you've East County Rising, and both of you have been in the news a lot, and in the last year or so, and have East County as being the people that are seeking to make positive change, and that's a good thing. So we're really happy to have you here. So tell me a little bit, if you would, about East County Rising. Exactly what's the backstory on it? Why did you decide that was something important that you wanted to do?
Yeah, I'll take this one.
Sure.
Hugh and I moved back to Gresham from Washington, D.C., even though we had purchased our home here and had lived here for some time during 2009. Right in probably like the end of 2015, 2016. And, most of the work that we did kept us home. Mm-hmm. And we were really involved nationally on boards of national nonprofits and statewide, and but very little in terms of community engagement right here in our home. Yeah. And right after the 2016 election, we were watching the election at our home with our family members and friends, and we have some immigrant and undocumented people in our family, mm-hmm. and in our friendship circle too. And the room immediately turned to tears and fear that people were going to no longer be able to be with us. And Hugh and I, in our families, we play pretty strong pillars for our nephews and nieces and siblings. And we looked at each other, and then we looked at our families and friends and said, we promise that your gunkles are going to work harder than ever to make sure that nothing happens to you.
And a gungle is?
A gungle is a gay uncle.
Okay. Of course I should have figured that out.
There's two of us. And so immediately we started really focusing our attention on Gresham, where our families lived and our friends lived. And one of the first things that we decided to do was to pull community together. And we said, if our family's feeling this, others in the community might be feeling this. And so we just put out a call, and we had over 30 people who came to our home, and it was just our living room. And I said what was at top of mind for me, which was that I really wanted our kids, our parents, our community to feel comfortable going to school, accessing government safe, without the fear that they would get targeted because of their immigration status. And you know, you share one thing that's important to you, and then the community shares 100 back.
Right.
And so what we realized, like, people were complaining about not having roads or sidewalks. Others were complaining about having to commute outside of Gresham for work. People started complaining about their rent and not being able to afford to live here. And so we said, well, what do we want to do about it? Like, we can sit around
we can complain all day long.
all week. We can host coffee here at our house, or we can try to do something about it. And so we started looking at the city makeup. And I remember Hugh and I called city council. We said, we really need you all to do something affirming for our immigrant community here. And we just didn't like the answer we got. And then later, I was at the library. I'm an avid reader. I try to read like 3 to 4 books a month. And so I was at the library, and my librarian had gone homeless.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, well, here's a county employee, and she's living in her car. And she tells me this horrifying story that, you know, the culture is that you sign a year contract, and then around month 9, you have to start looking for a new place because your rent could go up. There was no rent control. And she had caught in a situation where she hadn't done that and found herself. And I just thought that that was unbelievable. And so I started calling the city again, saying, we need renters' rights. We need to take care of our most vulnerable. And we didn't like the answer we got. So we created East County Rising. We said, you know, individually, we can be a resident that complains, and maybe our grievances don't get anywhere. We can be a resident who has great ideas, and they won't go anywhere. But collectively, you can make a difference. It's harder to be ignored. You're
heard when there's a louder voice there.
When there's a choir, right?
Yeah, when there's a choir,
And so that was the vision, and we asked ourselves and said, are we willing to all give at least $20 a year to support this organization, and then give it the time and the energy that it'll take to lift up the priorities of the whole community, not just a couple of us.
Right.
And we did, and from the get-go, we were committed to making sure that the organization's board was representative of everyone in Gresham, both in age, gender, neighborhood, race, sexual orientation.
Looking at your board without knowing some of those things, it's a very diverse board.
You know, it's really amazing.
And
we
staff
have
too.
We have a Vietnamese woman who had her PhD in anthropology and displacement. So she lived in New Orleans, was displaced with Katrina hit, and then decided that that's the kind of work she wanted to do. We were lucky to put her on the board.
Are these some of your staff or board, or?
These are community leaders. So our office ends up hosting a lot of different community meetings. And so here you have members from the Reynolds Education Association, so our teachers in our Reynolds School District, and faculty and administrators. We have Play East, which is a recreational program.
I've had Pyro on the show.
And we have Beyond Black,
familiar,
and Play Grow Learn. And so we created a place where organizations come together and say, like, hey, what can we do together around parks and recreation and stuff? And so
Yeah, and I would say this is one of many testaments and opportunities that we've had to, one, work with community organizations who've been wanting to partner with an organization like East County Rising to help build that momentum and build the movement of organizers and community leaders to help make change. Kind of like Eddie was saying, you know, after the 2016 election, there has been, you know, there is a lot of energy around how do we cultivate this energy and use it for good.
Right.
And so we're seeing discrepancies in terms of economic inequality, you know, about who's representing us in local government. You know, people are really starting to notice that, and they're really asking now the hard questions of how do we change that and how do we become part of that. And so East County Rising,
right?
The timing was right, exactly. The timing was right for this organization to start and to offer that outlet for people to partake in this new movement. And yeah, I've been just so fortunate to be part of this organization, and I'm so lucky to say that I do what I love and I love what I do.
Isn't that a great thing?
Exactly.
I feel the same way. So tell me, how did you get involved? Did you just hear about it and I want to be part of it, or?
Yeah, well, actually, so I was working for another elected official. I was working for Congressman Blumenauer as his field representative, and so I'd been there for you know, about over a year when I heard about this position with Eddie, and he was hiring for his campaign for Gresham City Council. And so when I heard about him, I looked into the values and his campaign. I thought this is exactly what I envisioned. These are the values I also bring and the change I want to make. So sign me up. And so,
Great.
So yeah, since I've joined his campaign through East County Rising, it's been, you know, a wonderful experience to see how we've been able to build out the infrastructure and a movement of organizers and leaders who see the similar vision for East County, you know, who want to make that difference.
So from the leaders in the city and the stakeholders in the city, the support you've gotten has been pretty good, hasn't it?
Yeah. You know, I think right off the bat, I think part of why the organization like took off and stuck is that people were looking for a place to do civic engagement. And you know, it's like if you build it, people will come. And so both current elected officials who wanted to have a closer relationship to community and be in relationship with community, we're looking for where do we do that? Where do we go to engage your everyday resident as a partner? You know, I think a lot of our electeds and the practices that you host a town hall and you just talk to people a lot about what you're working on. And I think some of our electeds and leaders wanted a different type of relationship with people. We're like, how do we talk about the problems and more importantly about our vision together?
Right.
And then how do we all carry the water in all of the different ways that we can make change?
Right.
So
is this like one of the meetings that you had, or?
So do you want to tell the story?
Well, yeah, sure, absolutely. So one of the biggest things that we have done through Eddie's campaign and through East County Rising is to engage low propensity, you know, historically underengaged or underrepresented voters. So a lot of the people that we were talking to at the doors were people who have never voted before. You know, one, because they didn't see themselves reflected in you know, in those different candidates that were running for office, or they just didn't have that incentive or that education of, you know, this is why it makes a difference for you to vote this election.
A lot of people still think that. They think my vote doesn't count. As we know, in your election, it really does count because it was a very, very close, election. Yeah.
Right. And so when we were knocking on those doors, you know, because our model was to engage first-time voters. Around the election, or I think it was after the election, we thought we had lost. We were under by about 1,500 votes. And a few days later, we started noticing that the gap was decreasing. There were more ballots that were being counted, and we were within a margin of I can't remember, it was about 38 county of these challenged ballots. There were 300 challenged ballots on this list, Monica, and these were a lot of folks that we had talked to at the doors. And if it weren't for the engagement we did afterwards, these votes would have never counted.
Wow.
These folks would have,
And I want you told me there's a story about this gentleman,
There is.
and this ties into this same story, right?
Absolutely.
Tell me about that.
I had the honor to actually to help. I'm going to change his name for privacy
Mr.
purposes.
59.
Mr. 59. Let's call him that.
59. Okay.
Right. So during the ballot chase, we were trying to get a hold of these 300 folks on this list and let them know, hey, your ballot did not count. Let us help
For
you
just
recover
various
it.
reasons, or
There's. Do you want to tell?
No, go ahead.
There's two reasons why a ballot would not count. One is because they didn't sign the back of the envelope.
Okay.
So we don't sign it, they can't count it.
Right.
And number two is because if they signed it, there's a mismatch with what the elections office has on file.
okay.
So
they sign a different name, they use
exactly.
their nickname or whatever. And, yeah.
So basically, we had tried to get a hold of our
Mr. 59, yes.
vote for a while, and every time I would call him, his son would answer, somebody else would answer and said, he's at the fields, he's not here, he gets home very late. But it was our very last day, and I thought to myself, I'm going to give this just one more try. And we were calling these folks every day. We were trying to really get the word out. And finally I got a hold of him. He said, I just got home from work. I worked a 12-hour shift today, just got home from work. I really want my ballot to count. What can I do?
Okay.
It was about 4:15 p.m. The elections office closes at 5. And so I told him, I'm going to go pick you up. We're going to go to the elections office and we're going to cover your ballot. You're going to recover it. And he said, let's do it. And so when I went and picked him up, we had traffic because it's traffic hour towards the, we're heading to the office.
In Portland, right?
Yes. So we drove him from Gresham all the way to Portland. So it was quite a commute, especially during traffic hour. And he was telling me on our way there how amazing, how important this was for him, that he was voting for somebody that had reflected his same values, that he saw himself reflected in. He said never before had he seen a person of color run for office or somebody, who he felt he can relate to.
Right.
And so he got even teary and said, I just became a citizen a year ago.
Oh.
And this is my first time voting. He's been in the States for over 20 years. He's worked in the fields, he's a farm worker. And he said, this is the kinds of things that I want to help also show my kids. They knew that this is important, voting is important, and I want to help make a difference.
So had he voted before?
He'd never voted before.
This is his first election?
His first time voting.
Wow.
I was lucky enough to earn it, too.
That's a really big deal, and that's a really special story.
So he's my 59 forever.
I love it.
He made it to the elections office with 5 minutes to spare.
Wow.
So.
Wow. And so he had not signed or had signed a different name or something, and they had to...
I think he had not signed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just had to do that?
We had another story. It was a young woman, too, and she answered the phone and she said, I voted for you, but what's the problem? I said, well, your vote's being challenged because the signature that you signed doesn't match the signature that the DMV has on file. And she goes, oh, geez, like they have my signature from when I was 16 years old. She goes, I'm now a student at University of Portland. If you meet me out here, I'll fill out a new voter registration form for you to take in. And we actually met her during passing time at the track, right? And she signed it and thanked us so much for ensuring that her vote got counted. And so
that's amazing. That's powerful stuff, really. And when people understand how important it is to vote, it makes all the difference. Because I think a lot of people just don't take that right seriously, and it's a big deal. So how do you? I mean, obviously you do motivate people to vote. How else do you do that? How do you inspire that civic engagement? How do you get people to understand that it really does make a difference?
Yeah, and I think this is probably our philosophy too, as people and as an organization. We have a tremendous amount of trust that people, if given the right skills and the information, will do the right thing. And for too long, we've created a bureaucracy of a lot of hoops and barriers that people have to jump to just get involved.
So we make it tough for them to get involved.
And so I think part of this is bringing transparency, accessibility to things, like
Tell me about you were telling me about something that happened at City Hall, I think it was, and about the translations.
Yeah.
That to me was really interesting as far as making things accessible to people. So what was that?
So this story that I like to tell speaks to why it's important to have diverse voices and perspectives on representative government.
Right.
But it also is this philosophy that I'm talking about removing barriers. So my very first meeting that I attended was a meeting around our housing task force. And so here it is, we're hoping that the community will come and give us their thoughts on how housing is or is not working for them.
Right.
And I'm sitting in the audience, and I notice a row of non-English speaking people. And they look confused by the process. They're trying to, the whole meeting's held in English. It's intimidating. There's microphones, and then you have to sign up for public comment. And so
they wouldn't understand any of that, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but they have a lot to say about what it's like to be renters in Gresham.
Yeah.
And so I raised my hand and I asked, do we have translators? Because these people have something to say about their situation in Gresham. And they speak, every one person speaks for hundreds, right?
Right.
And I said, so they're speaking for a very important demographic and community. And they said, no, we don't have an interpreter. I said, well, do we have translation equipment? If you give it to me, I'm pretty fluent in Spanish. I can handle this one. And we didn't have it. And so through the whole meeting, I'm sitting here translating, in a really
which wasn't what you expected to do that.
Not what I signed up for, but so translating for them, which was probably disruptive for everybody else, and then like trying to capture their emotions and stories and share that back and forth. The next day, I brought this up to our city manager and to our other counselors. I said, this was a situation that happened. We now have translation equipment at the city. We went out and bought some and are making it available to community groups too so that they can use it.
That's great.
And we're translating materials into, I think this last thing that we did was like 7 different languages.
Right. The 7 most common ones, I suppose.
Yeah. And now we have translation services available for people. And so I'll get a Facebook message from some random person in the community, like, we want to come to this meeting that you're promoting. Can we get a translator there? And so we provide that.
That's great. That makes a huge difference.
We also started providing childcare.
So wow. That's huge.
People
we found that too. Yeah.
Can come and bring their family and not have to incur an expense for childcare or figure out what they're going to do with their children. And we're trying to provide food too.
You're removing the barriers.
That's right.
Yeah. We're just about out of time here, and I don't know if we can get the control room to give us a couple more minutes or not, but I really want to find out about the Nature for All canvas, if you can tell me real quick what that's about.
Absolutely. So East County Rising is part of the steering committee for the Nature for All. And this is a bond measure that will approve for more funding to go to our parks in the Tri-County area. Okay. And so we're going to be hosting a canvas at our East County Rising office, and you'll put details on the screen, I'm sure.
Yes.
Right. But what this is a very important measure for the reason that we need more funding, more sustainable funding to go into our parks and our programming, and
there's no parks district here, correct? In East County.
Yeah.
Right, and so in parks is important, right? Why? Because your zip code shouldn't determine whether or how far a park is to you, right? And parks have, they should be more accessible to people, regardless of your background, regardless of where you live. And so we need more investments in park because it's a healthy outlet for everybody at no matter what age you're for everybody to get involved with.
Yeah, and that election's happening this year. And so I think we're going to try to do a lot of information. And so thank you for getting the word out about this.
Yeah, sure.
This November 5th is the election.
Okay.
This bond is a renewal, so it won't increase any taxes on anyone or fees.
Okay.
It's something that's existed. It's what's allowed us to build Powell Butte, Hogan Butte, Gabbert Butte. It's really about allowing our community to access and sort of dream and master plan some of our underdeveloped parks in the area.
And maybe programming for them as well. Is that right?
And eventually, the long-term goal through our coalition or our campaign of Our Parks, Our Future is to get a parks district out here, Parks and Recreation.
Great.
And we're really looking at Tualatin Valleys.
Yeah, they have a great one.
Yeah.
We are out of time. I don't know if they can show the last few pictures that we had. I don't know if there were some more that we didn't see. If we can, maybe take a look at those. But I have to say thank you so much for being on here and for your dedication and commitment to East County, because it's really important to hear all the voices and for everybody to be involved. So I think you're on the right track, and I really appreciate the work you've done.
I think the pleasure is ours, sir.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So much for hosting
Yes,
us.
thanks very much. And we'll have to wrap it up.
Okay.
Thanks for watching this first segment of Community Hotline. We'll be right back, so don't go away.
Community Hotline is made possible with generous support by Gresham Ford, the dealer with a heart. The Contribute to the Community program provides the opportunity for the Gresham Ford team to make a positive impact, serving their customers and helping people across the community. The Outlook, serving the residents of East Multnomah County for more than 100 years. The region's #1 source for information, The Outlook provides readers with intensely local coverage of the issues and people that impact our lives and community. The Mountain Hood Cable Regulatory Commission, advocating on behalf of the public interest on communications policy issues at the local, state, and federal levels. A very special thanks to all our sponsors who help make our programming possible.
Every week on Community Hotline, we highlight the great work of local nonprofits in our area. And now you can also see us on our live Facebook feed, 7 p.m. every second and fourth Wednesday of the month. So tune in and find out what's going on in your community.
It is so important for me to have the right to be able to speak what I want to speak and talk about what I want to talk about.
If you start shutting this person up and shutting that person up and shutting this person up, that's not America.
Hi, and welcome back to Community Hotline. I'm Monica Weitzel, and we're here in Gresham at MetroEast Community Media. Now I have the pleasure of interviewing one of my colleagues. This is Jessica Liu. She is our Digital Inclusion and Equity Manager at MetroEast. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me on here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. You know, you have been so involved in so many new things here at MetroEast. You're the woman with all the ideas is the way I think of you. But you know, you've done a lot of training, and you've done curriculum development, and you've worked with a lot of our youth and our immigrant and refugee community with our Welcome to Computers program. But you've also really taking the bull by the horns where it comes to the digital inclusion and equity, and that's a really big deal in our community and for MetroEast. So I appreciate that you've done that, and I believe that this is Digital Inclusion Week.
Yes.
Now this show will actually not air till next Wednesday, so it'll be and. So some of what you're going to talk about has not happened yet, but I want people to know what the kinds of things are that we're doing at MetroEast that revolve around digital inclusion and equity. So maybe you could tell us what you have planned.
Yeah, so we actually, part of Digital Inclusion Week, we just started our first class for Welcome to Computers. We don't do Welcome to Computers in the summer because we're running summer programming, so we just kicked it back off again this Monday.
Now that it's fall, we can start again?
Now that it's fall. And it was great. This year, or for this particular cohort, we're working with Rosewood Initiative and the folks at RIHO.
Which is a refugee and immigrant hospitality organization.
Yes. And they've been really great. We've been able to recruit about 10 or like 11 to 14 women, Rohingya women, and we also have a translator and interpreter helping us with that class.
So the Welcome to Computers class focuses specifically on the immigrant and refugee communities here in East County.
Yes.
And how many different languages have we done them in so far? Like 12, 15, something like that?
Probably upwards around there. We've done Russian, we've done Spanish, we've done Swahili, we've done now like Rohingya. We are also, the next cohort we're going into to do Bhutanese with a Nepali community. And we've done Ethiopian, so Somali. So a lot of different languages.
Yeah, and there's a huge variety of languages that are spoken here.
It's really interesting with Welcome to Computers because the refugee community and immigrant community is so diverse here. There are languages and dialects that I've never heard of before.
Right.
So I get to
Karen and different ones that
Yes. Oh yeah, and then that was another one. Karen. Yeah, that was another one.
Karen, is that how it's pronounced?
I think so.
Okay. See, I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of them that I haven't heard of either. So, but the fact that we have that available to people that will, if we don't speak that language, which chances are, we have Russian, or no, we have Spanish speakers here and English speakers and I think a couple other Vietnamese and
Cantonese. Ivana speaks
Bosnian.
Bosnian.
So we do have some represented here, but we'll find a way to teach it.
That's another thing too that I feel really grateful for, is that all of these organizations that we've partnered with, at least with Welcome to Computers, we've been able to get interpreters and translators, and we've been be able to pay them too, which has been really great. Without those partnerships or our partnerships with these organizations, we would not be able to have access to language interpreters.
And the other partners that we have, like Free Geek, who helps us provide computers that at the end of these classes, those are their computers. Those are their laptops.
Free Geek and Multnomah County Library really spearheaded the Welcome to Computers program like a couple of years ago, and they kind of developed the program. Free Geek continues to supply us with laptops, but we do it we're trying to do it once every quarter, except for summer because summer programming.
Because you have your youth camps and all that. Yeah. So that's a really big deal. And I know that part of what you do there is to try to let people know if they're low income that there's a way that they can still get broadband in their homes. And
a lot of what we do too during the first class, because many of the people, the participants for Welcome to Computers are pretty comfortable on their cell phones, and so maybe not necessarily so much on like a laptop or a computer format. So usually the first class or two is really focused on typing, so developing typing skills, mousing mechanics, and then also like navigating like browser anatomy.
Right. Well, it's not something you automatically know,
Yeah.
you know.
It's something that we take for granted
Yeah.
because I think we have to work in
You
those
take it for
environments.
granted. I didn't grow up with that. So, you know, I mean, there is a difference if you're older and didn't grow up with a computer,
Yes.
you know, all that's new when you first start doing it. But if you don't have one at your home anyway, you're not necessarily going to know how to do all that.
Yeah,
So.
and many of these communities, because of where they're originally from, maybe didn't have a very strong like education support structure, and so many of the people taking these classes, literacy levels, not just digital literacy, but literacy levels may be lower than.
Yeah. Bright people that they just haven't had the chance to learn all that.
Yeah.
And the classes have been mostly women, haven't they?
Yeah, it's but mostly women.
Yeah, which I think is kind of cool.
It is kind of cool.
Yeah. So then let's get back to Digital Inclusion Week.
Yes.
So what are we doing here at
Yeah, so
MetroEast?
we've had a whole bunch of things planned out for this week. It's already Wednesday, but Monday, like I said earlier, we kicked off Welcome to Computers. We also had a 3-day podcast workshop finish up on Monday. That podcast workshop was with WABI, which is the Wisdom Agriculture Business Incubator. They're an organization that helps Indigenous people develop micro businesses, essentially. So we got to do a podcast workshop with them. Yesterday, Tuesday, we had a DSLR videography class. Today we had a bunch of stuff going on. We had Gresham High School students come in here. They did orientation, and they also took our Studio A camera class. And then we went over to Open School. We just came back.
Right. You've been very busy today, I know.
Yeah. We just came back. We're like on week 4 or 5 of a 16-week integrated media / digital storytelling class. And students are going to, instead of like typing out a video personal statement, they're going to record themselves or make like a mini documentary. And then at the end of the 16 weeks, they will compile all of their work together into a portfolio, like a digital portfolio.
Nice. So that's for the high school students at Open School East.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, that's a lot of stuff going on.
Do you have
more?
any other things? This was lower down on the page for it, so I forgot.
Oh, and then on Thursday, we have our studio audio class.
Okay.
So that's kind of this week. But then we have other kinds of events going on this whole month because it is also Free Speech Week, the last week of October, and Digital Literacy Week that same week.
And Community Media Day.
And Community Media Day. Can I look at a camera?
Which is October 20th.
Yes. Community Media Day,
Yes.
October 20th. You should come to Metro East. We have 2 miking clinics. The first clinic is about stage miking. So it's good for if you're a beginner and you're kind of just curious about how to mic dialogue on a stage. And then the second miking clinic is for miking up vocals in a studio, like music environment.
Okay. And we have a nice vocal booth.
Oh yes, and we have a nice new vocal booth now.
Yeah.
We are we're kind of soft launching a new class that we're teaching here at Metro East, which is our audio booth class.
That's great. You know, just learning to mic up on a stage is something that like anybody could really use that, because eventually you're going to have to talk on a stage, or you're going to have to help somebody, and there's all these festivals and events, and I mean, there's plenty of opportunity to,
or even house shows.
Even that, yes. So, I mean, those are, most of the things that we teach here, those skills can be transferable to any job or to just your private life. And
yeah, kind of going off that train of thought, what I really like so far about working with students at Open School, besides the fact that, we're giving these kids new tools to put in their toolbox,
right?
But it's really inspiring and like refreshing to see kids really taking to certain aspects of video production, right? So if one kid is like really into doing lighting, they just kind of glom onto it, and then they actually like teach the other students in the class. So I think that creative collaboration is also really important.
Well, and you're giving them a chance to try out the different areas. So it's kind of like in Community Hotline here, we have volunteers who are working some of the different positions here. They get to try out running the camera, in a professional program, and maybe next time they'll be on the audio or the character generator, whatever. So getting a chance to try those out and see what you like is a good experience. So Community Media Day, what do you have going on that day?
Oh yeah, so we have the 2 miking clinics. The first one starts at 11 and it goes from 11 to 12.
Okay.
And then we have about an hour break break, and then the second clinic is from 12 to 1, and then another kind of hour break for mixing or networking. We're also taking testimonials here at our Studio B, just kind of around the corner, because there's the whole issue with the FCC, so we're trying to get people's testimonials kind of about like why community media is important to you.
Because it's being threatened by actions the FCC wants to take. Yes. So you can go to our website and find out more about it, and or you can come on down here. I would say that on that day too, that we'll have enough staff here that, and that's a Sunday, is that right?
Yes,
October 20th. Come on down, and we'll show you around.
Yes.
But if people aren't available that day, we have orientations every month, usually 1 or 2 of them, and you get the full tour of our of our space here and find out what we're all about and what community media is all about.
Yep.
Yeah.
I also want to throw in that the Community Media Day is a free event. So
yes.
Donations suggested, though.
Always happily accepted, because we do need help to keep it going. But we give people the opportunity to speak their piece about whatever they want. You can come on and you can do a show that's a talk show, or you can do a show that's an action show. We have a clown, a lady who's a professional clown, Cha-Cha the clown, and she comes in and she does her clown show for kids, and it's great. I mean, it's it's her way of sharing her profession with the world, and it's so she does a television show. She's award-winning now. Yeah. We have music shows. We have
aerobics.
We have I think it's probably our longest-running show. Larry Smith, the Body Smith. Yeah, he's been doing it for 30-some years, I think. Yeah. And another award-winning show. Where people do documentaries. You can do a show about anything you want, and I really encourage kids to come down and take our classes.
Yes.
Yeah, because really they catch on so fast that it blows me away. But
they also have the time.
They have the time, yes. So I mean, our classes are they're going to be in the evenings on weekdays, or they're going to be on the weekend, whatever, so that we can actually accommodate your schedule. Now, you brought a video, I believe.
Yes.
Tell me about the video.
So this video was made for Digital Inclusion Week, and it's a little it's some information about the digital divide. Okay. The digital divide is a phrase that we use to describe the disparity. Yeah, the disparities between, that's growing now. In the 90s or early 2000s, everybody was getting internet, had, for the most part, equal access to internet. But as things are getting more expensive, technology gets more expensive, and groups who are or have been historically underrepresented continue to be underrepresented. Yeah. And so the gap between people who have access to internet or broadband and people who don't are now widening. And we all know how many of your daily activities and your life conveniences are, you are able to do those things because of the internet.
Yeah. Well, and now in the schools, especially when they get to high school, they're expected to do homework on computers, right?
Yeah, a fact from the Benton Institute for Broadband and Society had a number out there that was said 70% of teachers at some point in the year will have an assignment that you will need to use the internet for.
And I think you even mentioned that on this video. Yeah. So why don't we just take a look at that and we can talk about it a little bit more afterwards.
Yes.
Let's roll it.
Okay.
Have you heard of the digital divide? It is the phrase we use to describe the increasing gap between communities who have access to broadband services and digital skills and those who don't. Increasingly, the United States faces significant challenges concerning digital equity. Digital equity is all about being able to participate in mainstream digital communication. A recent report from the Benton Institute for Broadband and Society says more than 20 million households in the United States do not have broadband subscriptions, a statistic that has profound implications and touches nearly every aspect of daily life. The internet has become an essential resource for job seekers. Recent data shows that 4 out of 5 job seekers are using online resources when seeking employment. Online learning has made higher education more accessible to working adults, people with disabilities, and students who cannot afford a full-time college education. the workforce must be prepared for a future where learning new digital skills will be essential to all industries. Globally, across all sectors, the most in-demand occupations did not exist 10 or 5 years ago. Change is set to accelerate. By one popular estimate, 65% of children entering primary school today will ultimately end up working in completely new job types that do not currently exist. The digital divide creates a structural barrier to closing income and education gaps and remains an obstacle to an individual's ability to move up the economic ladder. Communities most affected by these barriers are low-income, rural, tribal, the elderly, and communities of color. Digital equity and inclusion builds the capacity of individuals to bridge the digital divide, lift themselves and future generations out of poverty and technological isolation.
Good job. Yay.
Thank you to our interns who shot some of that and also edited.
That's great. They did a great job. Well, it explains it really well, because I know I've heard people say, I don't understand why this is such a big deal for people to have. Well, think about it, like we were talking about. If you don't have a computer in your home, you don't know how to use it, then applying for jobs,
Yes.
just going online to check medical stuff, make appointments, talking to your kid's teacher.
Yes.
Yeah.
So more and more having access not just to internet, but specifically broadband and high-speed internet is really important. There was a kind of a sound bite in there that said that rural communities historically have been really difficult to reach. Rural communities also have issues with accessing healthcare. So some folks have to drive like 100 miles to just see a specialist.
Right, and telemedicine now.
Yes, telemedicine. Right? That's like another
Huge.
emerging industry that could really benefit this population. But because they don't have internet access, they can't.
It doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. It's also really interesting, I think, that because rural communities are kind of forced into the situation where internet service providers don't want to invest in building the infrastructure, a lot of rural communities have been pulling together and actually developing their own broadband.
They're like municipal broadband, right? Yeah. We had an interview here about that a while back for the Portland area.
Yeah.
That's things are changing so fast in the tech world that it's really hard to keep up. And the thing that I said about all the jobs of the future for kids, it's like
65%
don't even exist right now, which is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But I see where that would be true. So there's something else I wanted to ask you about. You have been involved with the National Digital Inclusion Association? Alliance. Tell me about the NDIA.
Yeah, the NDIA is an organization that helps craft and parse out information. They also work with legislative bodies to kind of help craft policy that would
surround that.
Yes.
Okay.
So they're kind of like the bridge between community organizations and then policy folks.
Okay.
And every year they have the National Digital Inclusion Alliance Conference. Last year was in Charlotte, North Carolina. This year it is going to be in lovely Portland, and it's going to be hosted at PSU. So lots of keynote speakers and planetaries and workshops about digital inclusion and equity. There's also going to be a tour bus that's going to be heading east, and it'll stop by Rockwood Makerspace, Boys and Girls Club, and then the last stop will be at MetroEast.
Yay!
So if you're interested in attending the NDIA, it is at PSU from April 7th to April 9th.
Okay. Great. And they can go to the website. I think we'll have the information on the screen to check it out further. You went to the one in Charlotte last year, right?
Yeah.
So, and we'll probably be quite involved with it this year, I imagine, since it's in Portland. Good. So, I think people need to be aware this is a really important part of the community to have access to broadband and to have have the tools, the training.
Yes.
To actually use them.
Right now with the NDIA, they're pretty focused on broadband. So any other Portland organizations or folks out there who are involved in either health or maybe access to housing or anything where you think, digital inclusion is important for your organization, I would invite you to come to NDIA and just,
Check it out.
Make some space at the table.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Good job. Sounds good. Anything else we need to know? Come on down. Come see us.
Yes, Community Media Day. I'm going to say it again. Community Media Day, October 20th, 11 to 2 p.m. Come over, check out the studio, go to our clinics, learn how to mic your friends for their song or their documentary or whatever.
Just find out what we have going on here, because
Yes.
it's a really cool space. Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Jessica.
Thank you.
You're a great asset to the organization. I'm so glad to work with you. Thanks so much for watching Community Hotline tonight. I'm Monica Weitzel. We'll be right here next week. We'll see you then. Good night.
Community Hotline is made possible with generous support by Gresham Ford, the dealer with a heart. The Contribute to the Community program provides the opportunity for the Gresham Ford team to make a positive impact, serving their customers and helping people across the community. The Outlook, serving the residents of East Multnomah County for more than 100 years. The region's #1 source for information, The Outlook provides readers with intensely local coverage of the issues and people that impact our lives and community. The Mountain Hood Cable Regulatory Commission, advocating on behalf of the public interest on communications policy issues at the local, state, and federal levels. A very special thanks to all our sponsors who help make our programming possible.